alcohol companies also operate in a fragmented regulatory environment. In addition to complying with federal law, alcohol companies must navigate production, distribution, and sales and marketing laws specific to each state in which they operate and sell their products. Cannabis players face similar challenges that only grow more complex as more states legalize and as each state continues to find its own unique way to address the industry as it grows. Even after federal legalization, there will still be nuances in each state to navigate through, and this is exactly the world that BevAlc lives in. The success of regulated cannabis relies in part on building a culture of responsibility, compliance, and professionalism, not unlike that of BevAlc. So it makes sense to take certain tried and true practices from a similar category that operates in a similar environment and adjust them to the needs of the cannabis drink space and the environment in which it operates.
When I think about fighting for survival, it was really about getting the flywheel started only to have it stop time and time again, because as we troubleshot each of the logistics and operations components, a new problem would emerge. And specifically, we were able to solve for manufacturing through building a new facility. We lost that facility, so we had to go find a new partnership. We got lucky. I think in the early years, fighting for survival is 50% grit and 50% luck. And we just happened to get lucky that at that time there was a co-packer in California who had just built a facility but had never produced any product. And so we were able to start scaling manufacturing, and then all of a sudden we realized that, well, we can't get enough product into warehouses and inventory rooms fast enough because distribution in the industry is set up to move pre-rolls and jars of flour. And so all of a sudden in the third quarter of 2019, we're building a first mile distribution company as an asset-light business just because we don't want stockouts. And so as I think of sort of the Cann story in late 2019, it was really, okay, we've proved the concept out. We know there's momentum in the channel. We're getting data back from our retailers on sell-through and sort of repeat purchase, and we're seeing the excitement, although it's very nascent, but we're not able to consistently service our customer base. And so you see this inflection in the fourth quarter of 2019 where the pieces in California finally started to click. And I think, just like with all aspects of the business in the early years, a lot of this was just knocking on every door we could find and just refusing to take no for an answer until we found a yes.
I think another thing to point out, based on what Lisa just said, is on a what I call buzz for your buck basis, the 2.5 milligram drink is still a really good value. And whether it's 2.5 or 5, if I compare it to a glass of wine, which is what we mostly compare it to for women, or some kind of seltzer, buzz for your buck, the value is truly there. And so I think we have a lot of education to do.
Well, and one other thing that mystifies me is in the alcohol industry, people don't walk in and look at a can of beer or a seltzer and say, well, am I getting, what's the alcohol percentage? And do the price calculate? I've always found that fascinating, why that still exists to such an extent in the cannabis space, yet in other ancillary categories, and we've talked today a lot about alcohol, that math isn't happening. You buy based on flavor. Maybe it's your favorite beer producer or your favorite winery, and you buy for taste and you buy for effect. You love that bottle of wine. So I am really hoping we can change that. I'm hoping beverage is the form factor that changes that, because I think that's a very antiquated way to look at the cannabis industry.
But that's why I think having great competitors next to each other on a shelf lifts the entire category.
Absolutely.
Gen Z in particular, and the younger millennial crowd, is really rethinking their relationships with alcohol, looking to take on this Cali sober movement. This has given rise not only, while this benefits the cannabis space, this is also really influencing this whole rise of NA spirits, NA craft beer, NA wines, non-alcoholic consumption facilities, and this type of mentality where you don't have to consume alcohol if you're out in a social occasion. You don't have to consume alcohol as part of your regular day. And this is really taking hold amongst Gen Z and younger consumers to a much larger extent than we see with older generation. 50% of those Gen Z consumers that were reducing their alcohol consumption reported substituting it with cannabis. Just the cannabis consumption, the psychedelics consumption, rates amongst that Gen Z and that younger millennial, consumer are growing so quickly, and they're so much larger than older cohorts in here. And especially if you compare those in with alcohol and tobacco, there's a really significant disconnect.